This is the story of a young Norwegian maritime sailor who was stranded in New York City in early 1941. Olav Eide was born in 1921 in Haugesund, Norway, on the west coast of Norway, just north of Stavanger. Olav completed grammar school in 1932 at age 11, and he then worked on his grandfather's farm for 4 years. At age 15, he joined the Merchant Marine as a deckhand. Olav was a deckhand on the ship Anders for most of 1936. He then sailed on the Anna Sophie for 18 months, from 1937 to early 1939. In 1940, Olav served on the Fjordheim, during which Germany occupied Norway. The German invasion of Norway caught merchant mariners and their ships abroad. The Norwegian government in exile warned Norwegian maritime ships not to return to Norway during the German occupation. In January 1941, while serving on the Fjordheim, Olav became hospitalized in New York City. When he recovered, his ship had left without him, and so he made his way to Chicago, where he recuperated with his aunt and uncle. From January 1941, Olav worked in Chicago, where he at one time sailed on the Great Lakes cruise ship, the Mizpah. Aliens were not permitted in U.S. military prior to Pearl Harbor, but that changed after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 7, 1941, and Olav was drafted into the military. After basic training, Olav volunteered for the 99th Infantry Battalion, Separate. It was a special unit, an ethnic unit, for Norwegian Americans and alien Norwegians who were fluent in the Norwegian language. This unit underwent Nordic training at Camp Hale in the mountains of Colorado. The Viking Battalion had 1,000 Norwegian Americans and Norwegian aliens. About this time, the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA, came calling for volunteers for a special unit of Norwegian-speaking soldiers. This was an elite unit led by Colonel William Colby, who later became the head of the CIA in the 1960s and 70s. Olav volunteered, as did his cousin Leif, and underwent intensive investigation. Each interview began with the statement, the OSS was, quote, looking for men to volunteer for extra hazardous duty behind enemy lines in Norway. The assumption was that the OSS must have some plans for something big in Norway. This special OSS unit was organized into 2 sections of 2 squads called NORSO 1 and NORSO 2, meaning Norwegian Special Operations Group. From July to November of 1943, Olav's OSS unit underwent intensive training designed to create hard-hitting combat units that would operate deep behind enemy lines. The training was hard and focused on the Nordic climate. Parachute training in England had the Norwegians parachuting at low-level heights of 600 to 800 feet. Nearly a year of arduous training in Great Britain, and the NORSO saboteurs were getting anxious about not getting covert missions to Norway, and wondering when their mission to Norway would be scheduled in the future. The problem was there weren't enough airplanes for covert operations in Norway, and the American flyers were young and inexperienced with flying especially under brutal Arctic conditions. Also, the Allied armies were busy fighting in North Africa and Italy. In late 1943 and into early 1944, the Allies became convinced that an invasion of Norway was not practical, complicated by the severe weather and mountainous terrain and the very large contingent of German soldiers assigned to secure Norway, nearly 400,000. Because there were trained soldiers ready to invade Norway, the Allies decided to use the threat of a Norwegian invasion as a ploy to force Germany to keep the nearly 500,000 soldiers in Norway and not be available on other war fronts. The NORSO units and the Viking Battalion became decoys to keep the large number of German troops from Italy and France. Operation Percy Red was launched the night of July 31st, August 1st, 1944, using 4 flights for dropping 14 uniformed soldiers into the Haute-Vienne area of France, central France. Olav Eide and his cousin Leif were on this team. Olav was a Bren machine gunner and Leif was a radio operator. Their team spent a month coordinating with the French resistance. Olav's photo album includes photos taken during this time. By the end of August, the decision was made to remove the team from France, return to England. Mission accomplished. In early 1945, the NORSO units were finally used in operations in Norway itself. As the war with Germany was clearly coming to an end, the Germans needed to move large numbers of soldiers that they had stationed in Norway for use in defending the German homeland. The Allies sought to disrupt the movement by rail of German soldiers stationed in the far north of Norway, and by sabotaging railroad bridges and tunnels. 4 planned flights of NORSO men were dropped under very poor weather conditions with marginal results. Olav was a member of a second group of planned flights to follow the first wave. However, 2 of the first flights crashed, and the plans for the second wave of flights, including Olav's portion, were cancelled. Germany surrendered on May 7, 1945, and Norway was free once again. Olav's NORSO group was ordered to the airfield in Trondheim to begin garrison duty there. His NORSO group acted as an honorary guard for King Haakon of Norway. The mission was over, and the NORSO group soldiers took leave to visit relatives in Norway, and thousands of Norwegians welcomed their royal family back home. Olav returned to Chicago, where he joined the Norwegian Glee Club and the Seamen's Union. He met and married Gloria Svigum, also in Chicago. The 1950 U.S. Census shows Gloria and Olav living with his Chicago aunt and uncle. Later, they moved to Milwaukee. Olav and his wife Gloria visited the NORSO crash site in Norway in 1977. Part of a NORSO reunion. In 1977, Olav was presented the St. Olav Medal at the Norwegian consulate in Chicago. He was accompanied by his 2 sons and a daughter, and his Sons of Norway Lodge members. In 1987, Olav met King Olav at Luther College in Iowa. Olav donated his army uniform to the Vesterheim Museum there, and it is still on display. Later, Olav served on the board of directors of the International Sons of Norway for 10 years. He also started a Sons of Norway Lodge in his home city of Haugesund, Norway. Olav was also very active at his home lodge in the Milwaukee area for many years. Olav Eide died in 1993. His life of dedication, devotion to his native Norway and the USA is a testimony to his character and his loyalty